The big problem, which scientists don't want to deal with, but they're going to have to, the question is not what happened. The question is why. You're talking about wrestling with faith. Faith is not a problem. Everything, I don't believe that. How am I supposed to believe that? Or I wish I could believe, but I don't believe. Belief is not the issue. The issue is, what do we know for sure is true, and therefore whether you believe it or not doesn't make any difference because it's true anyway. In other words, if there is something that we know is true, we should trust it and believe in it and be devoted to it. But don't begin with believing something.
What is belief, as opposed to intelligent conclusion? How do you explain the difference?
Belief means you accept what you're told without understanding it, without questioning it.
And what is safe to believe?
Nothing.
So where does...
Here's the point. Everybody thinks that religion begins with faith. And maybe that's true for religion. But we're not trying to be religious here. We're trying to be intelligent, right? Mm-hmm. So Rambam begins with the first instruction. It is your obligation to know the Creator. Don't believe it.
And this is Yiddishkeit?
Yes.
So not a religion.
Right.
So Yiddishkeit is based on an intelligent conclusion.
And that's the greatness of Avraham. Others had experience with God. Adam and Chava had an interesting experience with God. Noach had a project they worked together on. But imagine you're Noach. And God talks to you and you know for sure that God is real. Are you sure there's no other God? No.
It's an experience.
Yeah. So you experience something very holy, very... who's to say there isn't another one next week?
Intellectually.
Avraham came along and said, there's no other way. He didn't start to believe in God. He started to understand God. So, Hikir Avraham as Beirei, he didn't believe like Noach. He recognized. In other words, he showed logically how there must be a God and there can't be two gods and God has to be whatever, infinite, and so on and so forth. So Chabad began with Avraham. And that's why Rambam says, the beginning is the knowledge, the absolute understanding, conviction that this is the way it is, logically, because it can't be any other way. Now, what can't be any other way? A religion? What can't be any other way is the world cannot begin without a beginning. Where is the beginning? That's it. It's a very logical, simple question. We all know, there's no doubt anymore, that there was a time the world did not exist. There were no planets, there were no stars, there were nothing. There was nothing. Okay, what happened? The best science can come up with so far is that there was an explosion. What exploded? People say the problem with that theory is you're not explaining where the original substances came from. There were gases, there were particles, they exploded. Where did they come from? That's not the biggest problem. The big problem, which scientists don't want to deal with, but they're going to have to, the question is not what happened. The question is why. If in the beginning there was no physical universe, why did anything happen? There was this guy on the radio talking about intelligent design. You know, you can't explain the existence of stuff on the world without believing in God. And somebody called the radio station and said, do you know that people used to believe in God because of thunder? How else do you explain thunder? Who could make a sound like that? Only God. So, because they heard thunder, they were convinced there's a God. Then they found out what thunder is. Right now, we don't understand, for example, how human blood came into existence, because you can't put it together piece by piece. So evolving won't create human blood. So the only explanation is God created the world. So this guy who called in said, you're doing the same thing. You don't know how blood can come into existence, so wait until next week, you'll figure it out. How does that prove there's a God? So let's back up. First of all, what do we mean by God? If somebody says, what gives God the right to intervene in my life? Interesting. Intervene. I have a life, I exist, and he comes and intervenes. Then he's not God. That's like saying, how dare genetic stuff interfere in my life? Genetic stuff is your life. I don't need this genetic stuff messing me up. Yeah, you do. Without the genetic stuff, there is no life. So if we're talking about God, we're talking about the reality behind our existence. Not interested? This is a religion? So, the first thing we know about God is that he's original. If everything else was created, then the creator cannot himself be created. You got to start with something that already exists. Why does he exist? Because he's different. He's not like us. His existence is real, ours is manufactured. So if you don't assume that before we existed, something real existed, then we're just ignorant. Then we don't understand this world, we don't understand anything about ourselves, we know nothing. So it is completely compelling and logical that in the beginning there was something that didn't need to be created. You can take it back 16 billion years, 100 billion years, that's not the point. Somewhere, something was real, because we are not.
Meaning, we're not real by the fact that
we needed to be created. We are manufactured.
It's logically a logical conclusion based on the fact that
we didn't always exist.
The world?
Mm-hmm. So then the question would be, if there exists something that doesn't need to be created, which means it's eternal, it always was and always will be. We are not. If there is something that always was and always will be, why would he create the world? If you enjoyed this conversation or this topic, and you're looking for more information, or you want to hear it again from another angle, there is a way to do that. And that is in this book. It's all there. Order it from Amazon. You can read it, reread it, and share it.